Hello YouTube and welcome. In this video, I'm going to go over a lot of the new Amazon fees that were implemented in 2024 and 2025. If you're not aware of these fees and adapting to them, you're going to have a difficult time surviving in 2025 and beyond. So I want to break all these fees down to you and also give you a recommended action to combat each of these fees. So listen up, and hopefully this helps you stop a lot of the bleeding in your business. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is low-level inventory fees. So what this is Amazon will track your historical supply. So it will take your sales velocity divided by how much supply you have, and it will predict how many days left based on your prior velocity that you have before you stock out. And as you can see, the closer you get to stocking out, the more these fees go up. So for instance, let's take a small standard size product under 1 pound. If Amazon deems that you have 3 to 4 weeks of stock, it's going to charge you an extra 32 cents for every order you get. As you get even lower, between 2 and 3 weeks, that's going to climb up to 63 cents per unit. And then as you get 0 to 14 days of stock, it's going to be an extra 89 cents per unit. And this really adds up. If you're selling a lot of items that make $1, $2, $3, it can eat into your margin majorly. So definitely monitor this. Fortunately, Amazon makes it pretty easy to filter your inventory to see which SKUs are incurring the low-level inventory fee, and then you can take action on those right away. But as a general rule, what I'd say the best way to combat this would be to make sure you have a 28-day buffer of stock for all the products that make, let's say, $3 gross profit or less. So that means ordering from your suppliers with the correct lead time. So you need a supplier to ship the order to you, the transit time to your warehouse, the time it takes to prep the item and send it back to Amazon, and then the inbound time to Amazon. All those things combined should be factored into your lead time. So you'll probably have to order and restock products a lot sooner than you think you will if you want to maintain a 28-day buffer. And the other suggestion is kind of the opposite of that, is to actually ignore this fee if you have enough gross profit per unit. So I sell everything from very cheap items under $10 all the way up to $500 to $100 gross profit. So on the $100 profit items, I really don't care about this fee because it doesn't really make an impact as a percentage of my profit. So I figured out that I'm actually better off hovering between 0 and 30 days of stock and just eating the low level inventory fee than trying to keep, let's say, $100,000 of stock not selling at all times to maintain that 28-day buffer. So you have to look at the trade-off between your capital being tied up to maintain this buffer stock versus savings from avoiding these low-level inventory fees. So I'd say it's critical for the items that your buy cost might be $1 or $2 and you make $1 or $2. You really do need to avoid these fees, otherwise it's going to destroy your profit margin. But anything in the $5, $10 plus range, you're probably better off not stocking as deep and using that capital savings to buy more products and go wider on more products. You'll ultimately make more money that way than trying to avoid these low level fees no matter what. So, okay, the next fee you should be aware of is storage fees. So storage fees have been around forever, but recently they made changes both to the amount of the fee and also they created this peak storage fee. So something to definitely be aware of. So let's go through the rate card together just so you understand how storage fees affect your profitability. So you can have inventory in Amazon warehouses up to 22 weeks and you'll be charged a standard rate of 78 cents per cubic foot. It's assessed monthly shortly after the first of the month. And then you'll see that there will be surcharges as your inventory ages beyond 22 weeks. So 22 to 28, it's now the 78 cents plus a 44-cent surcharge. And then you can see that this surcharge gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The worst is when it's over a year old, you have basically quadruple the rate of the storage fees below 22 weeks. So instead of paying 78 cents a cubic foot to store your inventory at Amazon, you're paying $2.66. So that's something to be very aware of. And fortunately, you can filter your inventory by age, and you can also see your total long-term storage fee monthly, as well as your regular storage fee monthly, using reports and just looking at FBA inventory. There's a way to see it easily. And that's for standard size products. Oversize is a little less per cubic foot, just because each unit is so big that Amazon, I guess, is trying to be a little bit more friendly towards the larger products, understanding that if they were the same or higher storage fees, it would become cost prohibitive. So, and then the other thing to be aware of are peak storage fees. So these are really, really killer. Every October, November, December that comes around, I get hit with $30,000-$40,000 a month of storage fees, because the rates basically quadruple during this peak season. So as you can see, during Q4 from October through the end of December, that fee that was 78 cents per cubic foot is now $2.40 per cubic foot, which is crazy. And then you also have the same surcharges. So you can be paying up to $4 per cubic foot per month on storage. So if you're selling anything that's big or bulky at all, be very, very, very aware of the Q4 storage fees, because it can really chop your margin in half or worse. So I learned this one the hard way. I had some big bulky products in there. I sent about 120 days of stock in for Q4, not really thinking about storage. But then when I actually looked at it, those big Q4 storage fees every month took a huge chunk out of my profit. So now onto the way to combat those fees. So you should be looking at your inventory age weekly or monthly to see if there's any really, really bad bleeding. You'll be surprised at what you find. You might find some SKUs where you're paying hundreds of dollars in storage fees per month, and your projected profit is a lot less than that, for instance, in which case you may want to drop the price and move the inventory very quickly, or do an ad campaign, or even a liquidation order or a removal order to get that inventory out of Amazon and into your warehouse or liquidated. So I would look on a SKU by SKU basis, at least monthly, I'd say, just to see if you have to take action on any specific SKUs. And then for Q4, I would replenish very frequently smaller amounts. So rather than sending in 120 days or 90 days of stock all in one shot, I would try to time it as best you can on a weekly basis and just feed in stock lower amounts more frequently. And then that way your stock, you won't have this huge amount of aged stock during Q4. And that should help you mitigate the fees. And then lastly, I would say, look into FBM during Q4. A lot of times FBA sellers will stock out, or FBM will even get some buy box during Q4. And that way you avoid storage fees altogether. And it's another way to sell all the way up to Christmas pretty reliably and not be worried about deadlines and things checking in on time. And it definitely reduces the stress, but you have to make sure that you get adequate buy box and there's adequate margin. But FBM is an option for Q4 if you're really worried about storage fees. So moving on to the next fee type, we're going to talk about removal order fees and how much they've increased over the year. So back when I started selling on Amazon, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, removal orders were extremely cheap. Everything was about 25 cents a unit, regardless of the size. It was actually insane how cheap it was. Since then, Amazon has gotten smarter, and it more accurately reflects the real cost to remove inventory back to the seller. So now it's on like a weight and size based system, which admittedly does make sense. I think Amazon was just eating the cost and probably taking a lot of losses on sending inventory back to sellers. So now they've smartened up and make sellers think twice about removing inventory. So going through the rate card, even a light item is now $1 for a unit. And then if you're between a pound and half a pound and 1 pound, it's $1.53, and then 1 to 2 pounds is $2.27. So that's quite a bit of money. And then this is the real killer. So if you're selling items more than 2 pounds, we're now talking $2.89 plus $1.06 a pound above 2 pounds. So if you're selling a 10-pound item, you're looking at a removal order fee of $11 per unit. So that can just absolutely murder your margin if you need to make removal orders for bulky or heavy items. So be very, very aware. Don't just remove items without thinking about it. Often you're better off liquidating the stock or dropping the price majorly, and you're going to be better off than removing it back to your warehouse. A way to mitigate removal costs. So consider returnless resolutions. So if you go up to your FBA settings and look at returns and liquidation settings, there's something called returnless resolutions. And that basically is where the customer will keep the item even if they want to return it. And what that's going to do is eliminate the return processing fee potentially, and B, the removal order fee. If the item comes back to Amazon grades it as unfulfillable, then you typically want to remove the item back to your warehouse. And if you do, often that removal cost is going to be larger than if the customer just kept the item, especially if a lot of those removals back to your warehouse result in defective items. So you get the item back and you realize you can't resell it again, and you're taking a loss on it anyway. Then you've just essentially paid an expensive removal order fee per unit just to throw it in the trash anyway. So my recommendation, due to these higher removal order costs rather, is to look at your entire catalog and determine which ASINs in your catalog might make more sense for the customer to just always keep the item based on the weight and size. So one easy example to look at is if you have an item that maybe costs you $5, but it weighs 8 pounds and it's big and bulky, then you'll see that it's better for the customer to just keep the item, because the removal cost per unit is going to be greater than your buy cost. So you're better off losing your entire buy cost on the return rather than having it removed back to you. So I take a look at that. You can enroll certain ASINs, you can enroll your entire catalog, you can customize it however you want, but I would recommend doing that. And then that's not even to say, whatever your labor cost that you're saving is too, because if a removal order does come back to your warehouse or your prep center, the prep center is going to charge you a couple of dollars to process that return. And then if it's your own employee, that's going to cost $1 or $2 in time to grade the item and determine whether to throw it in the trash or relist it, all that type of stuff. So that's removal order fees. And then the last thing I'll say about removal order fees is if you're selling oversized products, really be careful to make sure the listing is secure, that there's no potential compliance issues or weird history where you might be caught with hundreds of units stuck and then you're facing a multi-$1,000 removal order. So just be very careful, make sure everything is really good with the listing and you're very confident that everything will go okay with it when you're shipping heavy, bulky items. Okay, moving on to the next fee, which is going to be return processing fees. So as of 2024, mid-2024, Amazon is now charging a return processing fee if certain ASINs in your catalog are above acceptable return rates. So let's say, for instance, you're selling a beauty product and you're getting a return rate of 7%, and the threshold that Amazon has set is 5.5%. Now that since you're over that threshold, every return on that ASIN that comes back, they're going to charge you a return processing fee. And this is basically a disincentive for sellers to sell products that are returned frequently. It's basically Amazon indirectly saying, we want products that are not returned very much, that customers like, and they just really, I don't think Amazon themselves particularly likes handling returns. I don't think any retailer does. So this is just kind of a disincentive for any seller to sell things that are frequently returned. In every category, there's kind of different benchmarks. They do recognize that certain things are just susceptible to higher return rates, and it is what it is. And notably, apparel and shoes are not on this list because guess what? They charge a return processing fee regardless of what your return rate is. So that's even worse for apparel and shoe sellers. So now let's look at the actual rate card here. So for apparel and shoes, you're looking at $1 to $3. Let's see, a pair of shoes, probably ranging from 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds. So you're looking at like on average $3.50 every return that comes back on top of just, getting the sale refunded. So, so for apparel and shoe sellers in particular, you should really be baking this into your margin because this can significantly eat into your margin. And then fortunately, my own return rate is pretty well below these thresholds on most things, I believe. So I don't experience too many of these return processing fees. But for those sellers out there that are selling things that are having a high return rate, note this fee. And so action item, I would just monitor your return rate. A tool like Sellerboard is really good for this because Sellerboard will actually show your return percentage on every ASIN, and then you can identify problem ASINs, and I believe Sellerboard will also include these fees as well. So Sellerboard is a great way to actually view your profitability in general. You do have to upload your cost of goods sold, of course, but all the other Amazon related fee calculations, including advertising, storage, inbound, all these fees are calculated pretty well. So pro tip there, if you want to look at your Amazon profitability, Sellerboard is a nice tool for that. Okay, now let's move on to yet another fee that was implemented last year. And we're almost done. We've got one more after this next one. And that should cover pretty much all of the major changes, and you'll be well prepared to tackle these fees. So moving on, we have inbound placement fees. So inbound placement fees, they're basically putting the burden of the shipping cost onto us. So before, Amazon used to route shipments to basically one fulfillment center per product type. So if you're selling non-hazmat, non-oversized stuff, everything would route to a fulfillment center close to you. Now they're basically forcing shipments to 5 or more locations to basically put the cost of distributing the product across their fulfillment centers onto you, the seller, rather than taking care of it themselves. So basically, your options now when you inbound product to Amazon is to send it to 5 locations, which is a lot more laborious, but they won't charge you the extra placement fee. Or you can do partial splits, which is 2 or 3 locations, and then they start charging a placement fee per unit, which adds up depending on the size of their shipment. Of your shipment, it could be tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, or even thousands of dollars. And then if you really want to just consolidate it to one place, then that fee goes up even further. And the way to combat this would be to, fortunately, Amazon tells you like the difference in total cost between optimized splits, partial, and minimal shipment splits. So you should look at the total cost and basically choose, the cheapest option, but also consider things like shipping transit time. So if you save some money, if things are very close cost-wise, I would probably choose to ship it to the fulfillment center that's a lot closer, because you're going to save some days of time, and time is money in this business for sure. So, and then on a non-Amazon note and way to combat this, there are 2 services that I'm aware of, and I've actually tried both of them that I'll tell you about. And this really only applies to sellers that are shipping pallets. If you're just shipping small parcel, probably not for you. But if you're shipping larger volumes, these 2 services can help. So one of them is Pattern Middle Mile. So this is where you send all of your products, regardless of what fulfillment center is going to. You send it to their warehouse in Kentucky. They now have a second one on the West Coast too. You send everything there, and then they will split it up by all the way down to the parcel actually, and then they have a bunch of trucks lined up going to every fulfillment center. Amazon freight trucks, which actually check in typically much faster, in as little as a day. And basically they resort your items, and it's put onto an Amazon freight truck combined with other sellers' stuff as well, and it gets checked in a lot faster. And what they'll do is charge you per cubic foot for the item. So depending on where it goes, they may charge you a different rate based on the zone and also the product type. But this is a way to potentially save on inbound fees. And then service number 2, they have a competitive service. This is Zonprep in Georgia. They also do this consolidation and sorting into a lot of different fulfillment centers. So this is more of a flat fee per pallet, and overall is a cheaper option. And if anyone wants an introduction to either of these, please let me know, because I have contacts at both and I can introduce you if you're doing a decent amount of volume. So I am now currently using one of these services to inbound, and it is definitely saving a lot of money in inbound fees. Basically, I'm not paying any inbound fees because I'm always selecting Amazon optimized shipment splits, and then the 3PL is doing most of the heavy lifting. So last but not least, we're going to go into reimbursement amounts. It's not exactly a fee, but Amazon did change the way that they reimburse sellers for products, for the worse, of course. So we're going to go into how to get the absolute maximum for your reimbursements. And if you don't take this next step, you're probably going to lose out on thousands and thousands of dollars. So last but not least, we have reimbursements. So if you go to inventory and then inventory defect and reimbursement, Amazon is now automating a lot of their reimbursements for lost warehouse and damaged warehouse and customer returns and stuff like that. So as you can see, their automated process is reimbursing me for a lot of stuff. They've reimbursed, in the last 90 days, $123,000 worth of inventory across 4,000 units. However, there are a lot of things that slip through the cracks, so I'd still recommend having a reimbursement service audit this for you. But the main thing I'm going to be talking about is managing your sourcing cost. So from here, click Manage Sourcing Cost, and then you'll see that there are a bunch of SKUs, and there's going to be a sourcing cost. So Amazon has estimated your sourcing cost for you across your whole catalog. And sometimes it may be accurate, sometimes it may be even higher than you paid, but often it's going to be much lower than what you paid for the item. And the problem is, if you send that item to Amazon and some of it goes missing, Amazon is going to reimburse you based on their estimate of your sourcing costs. So what you should do as a seller is update your entire catalog of products with what you actually paid for the product. So basically what you can do is go to bulk update. Unless you have, 10, 20 SKUs, you could just do it manually real quick. But if you go to bulk update, you can download a file, and it's going to have all your SKUs and ASINs and then your sourcing cost. And then that's going to bulk update your entire catalog. And what that's going to do is now have Amazon reimburse you what you're rightfully owed, which is what you really paid for the product. And you may even have to fight this through cases. Amazon sometimes will reject your updates, which makes sense. Otherwise, people could potentially really abuse the system. They could say they paid $100 for a $2 item. So they have some sort of automated means to see to probably flag things that look pretty out of whack. But so sometimes you might have to fight with them and be like, look, these are the invoices. This is what I paid, and eventually you should win, but it may be a fight for certain items. Hopefully it's not too bad for you. And another pro tip, I would include your inbound shipping costs. So if your supplier is charging you freight, don't just put in the price of the item, put in your landed costs, including freight or, processing fees, whatever, and average that out over your products. And This alone should get you reimbursed greater amounts, you know, from this point forward. And it's actually quite surprising how many sellers are not doing this, including myself. I will admit that, I kind of slept on this, but it was brought to my attention fairly recently. So I thought I would, share it with all of you guys as well. So that's all I've got for this video. Hopefully it gives you a much better understanding of the fees outside of, the two biggest ones, which are the customer referral fee and the FBA fee. Those I think most people know about. So I wanted to provide more of a deep dive into the less common, or more overlooked fees, but fees that can really impact your margin by multiple percentage points. So hopefully you got something out of this video, and I appreciate you watching. Give me a like and a subscribe if you got value out of this video, and I'll be putting out plenty more. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.